It's officially fall, and it is the perfect time to take a walk around the garden and assess what worked and what didn't this season. And I also have a few other fall things to take care of today. Hi, it's Steph. Welcome back to my garden. In July, I had done a mid-season update on how my containers were doing, and I thought that it would be fun as we head into October to do a final update on how this year's pots did. So let's go ahead and take a look at these containers, plant up, and do a little bit of a fall refresh. I picked up some pumpkins and some more plants that I think will look really pretty here on the front porch, and I'll also give you a couple of updates on some other things. And here on the back patio, I'm going to work on planting up these 3 terracotta pots that I had as a trio here on my patio table all summer long. Now I'm going to plant them up with some fall plants. And I have here 2 of the Coral Bells Timeless Night that I purchased at Lowe's the other day, and I really loved this dark, moody foliage. I also picked up an ornamental pepper, again, because of this dark foliage and these dark red or dark black berries, I should say. They do start to change color once they get some sun on them, but I thought this was really pretty, so I grabbed one of these. I also had found some pansies, and these pansies are really pretty because they have a dark maroon color with a deep purple in the center. So I thought that they were really pretty and would coordinate well with this dark foliage on the heucheras and the ornamental pepper. And I went to my garden club meeting recently, and there was a raffle, and I won one of these mini cabbages. So I'm going to incorporate this in the planters as well. And there's one other plant that I'm going to transplant from my front beds. They were some Dusty Miller that I had started from seed that I kind of just tucked in the corner of my front border that are now nice and good sized that I can also add to these planters. So let's see what I can come up with. To plant my containers, I am going to use some of the Coast of Maine organic mix, and this is the annual mix, which is new and awesome because the annual mix is formulated to give you brighter colored annuals and more vibrant foliage. Now, I wasn't able to find any individual pansies in these really beautiful, deep, moody fall colors, but I did find this one that has a few plants in here, so I'm actually going to divide it. I'm actually going to use my Vigo Hori Hori and divide this up to use among all 3 of these planters. So that is 2, and I can see there's 1 plant here, so I'll use that one there. And there are 2 plants here. Perfect. Use this one in the middle. All right, let's finish these up. And here are my planters. I think they turned out really nicely. I really love the dark foliage of the Coral Bell with this silvery foliage of the Dusty Miller. And then these pansies should start blooming a bit better pretty soon. They're all budded up. And I think these turned out really nice. Starting here on the front porch, this purple fountain grass will be a definite yes. It looks absolutely gorgeous as we transition into fall. One thing I did learn about this grass is that it definitely needs consistent moisture. Otherwise, it will start to dry out, and then you'll get some of these kind of unsightly blades of grass that look a little bit brown. And the reason I didn't water this one as frequently is because with the dipladenia that I had paired in this container with it, the dipladenia can go a little bit between waterings. I can go every other day or every 2 days because it's a tropical and likes to be a little bit on the dry side. So I found that these 2 were not great companions, but I will definitely grow the fountain grass again, as well as the dipladenia. It is one of my favorites, just maybe not together. And then this that I have in the front here is the Dichondra Silver Falls, and this is also another definite yes. But in the backyard, I'm going to show you one that I grew for the first time this year that is very similar in color and in leaf shape and was absolutely stunning and very vigorous. As we head to the other planters here on the front, now some things are looking worse for the wear at the end of the season, but I will tell you that something that I grew for the first time this year was vinca. Now vinca is also very drought tolerant and did really well for me this season. It is starting to yellow and kind of go over now as we head into October, but definitely a plant that I will be growing again. And of course, I did love having my sedum in my pots because you can see that they are still looking gorgeous and starting to pink up now. The pollinators absolutely love it. And I did do a Chelsea chop on this. This is the Autumn Joy sedum, which gets pretty tall and has a tendency to get a little floppy. So I Chelsea chopped it at some point before the 4th of July, and it is now starting to bloom. So what the Chelsea chop does is it delays blooming and also helps that for the plant to be a little more sturdy, right? So that it doesn't flop as much. The downside is that it will take a little bit longer for your plant to bloom, which isn't actually a bad thing because look, we're heading into October and now I'm getting blooms, but the blooms will also be a little bit smaller. So instead of getting those really large Autumn Joy sedum bloom heads, you're getting a bunch of smaller clusters, which I'm totally okay with. I really love the use of perennials in planters. And here's something that is not looking so good, but definitely a plant I will grow again. This is the Zahara Double Ripple Raspberry Zinnia. And I showed you what these looked like in my front wall space, right? The border that I did in the front there. They're stunning. They're a great zinnia. It's just that in the planter here, they're just done. They don't have as much moisture to reach for in these containers. So they kind of went over a little bit faster than the ones that are planted in the landscape, which was also a great experiment to see whether or not they would do well for the entire season in a container. And something that I'm kind of on the fence about growing again, as much as I love them, I'm not sure that I'm very good at growing them, and that is geraniums. Now you can see this one here never really amounted to much. I did fertilize these a few times throughout the summer, but it's looking a little bit small. And also I tend to get a lot of yellow leaves that I'm constantly picking off, which is why it always looks tiny. And I can never quite tell if it's because they're getting too much water or too little water, because either one of those circumstances will cause leaf yellowing. All I know is that I constantly picked off yellow leaves on this plant and I just couldn't get it right this season. But I really do love geraniums, so I would say that I would grow them again. But if you guys have any tips for me on growing them well, please leave them for me in the comments. This is another definite yes. Friends, what we'll have to do next season is at some point in July, we will have to start some nasturtium seeds because nasturtium loves cool temperatures, so they rebound beautifully in the fall. So this is the Tip Top Pink by Baker Creek, and it's a bit of a yellow with a little bit of pink in the center. Another plant that does amazing is pansies. I started these from seed in the spring, and I still had a couple of babies in here that are starting to bloom, which is really fun. That was the Black Devil variety, also by Baker Creek. And I actually had another planter here to the side that a couple of the pansies had died, but it looks like I got a little seedling. So it may or may not bloom by the end of the season. We'll have to see. And look at this. I had a little celosia self-seed itself in this container here. So celosia is another really easy plant to grow from seed and does wonderful in the fall. Even the foliage has a lot of interest. Look at that with the red leaves. So next July, I will start some seeds in July for some fall plants that we can put in our containers. I will remind you as well, we'll be starting some celosia, some nasturtium, some pansies, and another plant that I'm going to show you in the backyard. And here on my back patio, you can see that the Boston ferns that I have in these hanging baskets are doing really well. I think they really like the cooler temperatures of fall because they have grown quite a bit in the last several weeks. And then here are these two planters that I did as a matching set. And this is the plant that I was talking about that is very similar to the Dichondra Silver Falls in both leaf shape and in color. It is stunning. This is Helichrysum, also known as licorice plant. And this is a definite yes for me next season. This is the first year that I grew it, and you can see just how voluminous it is. Kind of wraps itself around the container, making it look so large and beautiful. So this one I'll be using again. Something that I used a couple of times now. This one I used last year and it didn't do so well, but this year it did great. The Diamond Frost Euphorbia. I love how kind of airy and ethereal it looks above this foliage. So that is a definite yes. And a few weeks back, we had transplanted this marigold from my raised bed garden because it was getting a little shaded. And look how well it's doing. This helichrysum or licorice plant is so vigorous, it's kind of swallowing it up. So I will have to cut a couple of these branches away to give the marigold some breathing room. But this is another plant that is amazing for the fall, marigolds. So next July, we'll be growing some extras for fall containers. Really pretty. This is the strawberry blonde variety. And a plant that I will not be growing next year is the tuberous begonia. Now, it is beautiful, and I fell in love with it at the nursery, but it just wasn't very vigorous for me. I'm going to skip on this one next year. And here is the other container with the strawberry blonde marigolds, and you can see how gorgeous this variety is with all of the different shades of colors that it has. Has almost like a burnt orange, almost like a coral color with some yellow. Now the cordyline that I used in the center here, I had overwintered these from last year. So I used them in my containers last season and then again this season. But the foliage dies from the bottom up and then you have to peel it away, exposing the stem there, which I don't think looks that nice. So as the plant kind of grew up and in around it, it was fine, but I don't think I can overwinter these again, because if I do, then the foliage will be way up top. It'll look kind of like a cordyline tree and it'll be hard to disguise that trunk. So I will start with some new ones next season, but I'm happy to have been able to use those twice. And here's a plant that I will not be using in my containers again. It is the Rockin' Blue Suede Shoe Salvia, because look at it. It looks awful as we head into the fall. It just is very leggy. And I did have a Super Bells double orange underneath that I had to move out because it was getting shaded by the plant and not getting enough sun. But sadly, when I moved it, the plant died. And so if I'm going to use salvias again, it's going to be in the landscape. And I'm going to try the Playing the Blues variety, which is supposed to be a bit fuller and more vigorous. One final note on the Rockin' Blue Suede Shoes Salvia is that it was very messy. It would drop all of its spent blooms all over the patio. So if you are someone who doesn't like to see the spent blooms all over the patio or deck, it might not be a great container option. But I will tell you what I will be doing again. These gorgeous illustrious elephant ear by Proven Winners. Stunning. It has the most beautiful color on the foliage. And it kept giving me these really pretty heart-shaped leaves all season long. And so once the leaves get a little tattered, I would just go in and cut them out, but they are so pretty. I'm actually going to try to save this corm if I can, and see if I can use it again for next year. And this is the Color Blaze Sedona Sunset Coleus by Proven Winners, and also a rock star. Love it. We'll definitely use it again. And then the Super Bells Tangerine Punch that I used underneath was also great. Super vigorous, bloomed really beautifully the whole season. And even now, it's got a bunch of blooms on it. So really happy with this container. And something I grew from seed for the first time was this New Look Dusty Miller. This blue color is gorgeous. Didn't know how easy Dusty Miller was to grow from seed. And now that I know, I will be growing it from seed going forward. And this container I've also been really happy with. Now this was my first time growing osteoporum, and I will tell you that it does peter out in the heat of the summer. So back in the spring when I planted this container, I had quite a few blooms, but then as it got warmer, it stopped giving me blooms, but the plant continued to grow and I had a lot of green foliage. This was a little 4-inch container and look how large it is now. So this was a great plant. And it definitely started to get more buds as we headed into the end of the summer, and now it is blooming beautifully. Now this color, I'm not really sure what it's called, but it's gorgeous and definitely one that I would grow again, but just maybe have in a container with something that would bloom throughout the summer so that while these are in a lull, you still have some color. And then I tucked a little bit of lobelia. And lobelia usually peters out, but this one has been giving me some sporadic little blue blooms, which is really great. And this is another really great Super Bell. This is the Double Amber Super Bell. Definitely would grow this one again. The color paired so well with this osteoporum, and it was prolific. The whole front of this container was loaded with blooms. It was actually starting to grow onto the ground, and so I did shear it back quite a bit in hopes that it would load up with some more blooms for me, and it has started to bud up a little bit more. So as long as we don't get a frost, I think I will get some more flowers out of that. Petunias is another one that kind of peters a little bit in the heat of the summer and likes it a little bit cooler, I find. I tucked another Dusty Miller in this corner here, and I think it's looking really pretty. And another beautiful plant that is a definite repeat is this honey petunia by Proven Winners. It has the most beautiful coloration on it. Now, I will tell you that this petunia did get infested with budworms halfway through the season, so I did have to spray it with BT twice, which did take care of the issue, and you can see that now I have a bunch of new foliage and beautiful blooms that don't have those holes in them that are characteristic of budworms. They will deform your blooms. So it's looking really good and a really pretty petunia. And this one here was another rock star. Such a prolific bloomer. This is the Supertunia Mini Vista Scarlet. It has these like stunning hot pink red blooms. Gorgeous. And this plant is vigorous. I've actually cut it back 3 times this season, and it just keeps pushing out new healthy growth and a ton of new bloom buds. So this is a definite yes. Awesome performing plant. And I also really like the way that it pairs so nicely with my blue and white pot. I think that reddish color with this pot was a really pretty combo. And we're going to take a look at the shed planters, but I just had to take a moment to appreciate how beautiful my hedge of little lime hydrangeas are looking at the end of the season. They have all of their shades of pink and mauve, and they're even starting to take on that golden bronzy color. And just a really pretty shrub for your late season garden. I have 3 planted here, and they have gotten quite large and filled in beautifully. And looking at the planters here by the shed, this is my last group of planters, and I had put some elephant ears in the center that didn't really amount to much this season. These were some dark elephant ears that I overwintered from last year, and I would get a couple of larger leaves. They would immediately burn, so they just weren't great. So I will be getting rid of those and replacing them next year with something else. I do like elephant ears as a centerpiece in these back planters though, so we'll just try a different variety. Now these petunias were ones that I wanted to try for a couple of years now, and I finally did this year, and I wasn't that happy with them. They looked really good in July when I did my update, but then just like the honey, they also got infested with budworms, but this one did not recover quite as well. I treated it twice, and you can see that the foliage never really recovered. It's looking a little bit worse for the wear, and the blooms are still doing okay, but all in all, I don't think that I would grow this variety again. And the Creeping Jenny is still looking fine, as well as the Dusty Miller that I tucked in there. So all in all, this planter was just so-so. But the window boxes, now those are looking great. I just love this vista here into my Japanese maple garden between this hedge of the little limes that sort of forms a wall and a little bistro set there that kind of invites you in to take a seat. I really just love this space, and it makes me really happy when I walk through here. Sometimes when we're, planting plants and putting things together, we don't quite know how they'll turn out, and then one day it just catches you by surprise that you've created such a beautiful view. But back to this planter here. This is Dipladenia. This is a white version, and this is the second year that I've grown these in these window boxes. I overwintered these as well. They took some time to pick up and start blooming, so I didn't start getting blooms until about July, but now they have been blooming nonstop and looking really pretty. And I really love the white variety back here because it coordinates nicely with the shed. In the center, I have some overwintered cordyline as well. So these planters were pretty inexpensive this year because I repurposed last year's Dipladenia, last year's cordyline, and the only thing that I purchased new was a new to me plant that is also wonderful, and I will be growing again next year, is this Mizzou. It is a type of succulent, and a friend of mine actually told me that she took some cuttings of hers last year and grew them in the house as a house plant, and they did really well. So I will actually be trying that, something to keep me going through the winter months and see how it does. But really great one. Definitely would repeat the Mizzou. The Mizzou also gets these really dainty little hot pink blooms that are very similar to ice plant blooms. And they open up during the day when the sun hits them, and then they close up again in the evening, which I thought was really fun. And a few things that are still looking really beautiful heading into October, one of which is a St. John's wort. Now this one I did cut back quite a bit because I had some foliage that wasn't looking its best, but this is the Floral Berry Rosé by Monrovia, and it has these really beautiful pink berries, which is what attracted me to the plant in the first place. So it will first bloom with these little yellow blooms that you see there, and then it'll put on these really pretty pink berries. They almost look fake, but this is a really pretty shrub. And the Rugosa Chocolate Eupatorium is in bloom. Now, a lot of people grow this for the foliage, which it has dark foliage throughout the growing season and dark stems, and then it finishes strong as we head into fall with these really pretty and kind of billowy white blooms. They're really dainty and sort of ethereal, the way they just kind of float above the stems, and also a great source of late season food for our pollinator friends. I find bees and butterflies and moths all over these blooms all day long. And another really beautiful late season bloomer, anemones. Now I planted these just last season, so this is only year 2 for them in my garden. The variety is Whirlwind, which is a roughly white variety, and this clump has gotten quite large. I have one here, and I have another right there that's just getting ready to bloom. And I find that anemones do like soil with a little bit of moisture, which this bed has. So it has been really happy and grown really well in this spot. But such a treat to have such beautiful blooms this late in the season. I have that Joe Pyeweed, which is taking on more of a bronzy color at this point, but still standing nice and upright with the anemones in front of it. So I really like that. In the center of the bed, I have some height. And then over to the end there, I still have some pretty pink zinnias that are blooming with some Verbena bonariensis. And then, of course, these hydrangeas, which have a really beautiful fall coloring as well, shades of pink and mauve. And these are the Firelight Tidbits. And can you believe that this is only season 2 for these beauties? They're doing so well and looking so gorgeous. And then right in front, I have a grass-like perennial that is the sweet flag. This is a chorus. The variety is Ogon, and it is a variegated sweet flag. And it does wonderfully in this bed because it also likes moisture. So the hydrangeas, the Acorus, and the anemones, as well as the Joe Pyeweed, are doing really well. The Carly Rose fountain grass also looking really pretty in fall with its pink plumes. And another anemone that's looking gorgeous in the garden at the moment is this variety here by Proven Winners. It's called the Fall in Love Sweetly Japanese Anemone. And it's a pretty ruffled pink variety that is absolutely gorgeous. Now this year it is blooming a lot better than it did for me last year. I think it's because we've gotten more rain, but for whatever reason it is very happy, which makes me happy because it's really pretty and offering a lot of late season color. And in Steph's Home Nursery, still waiting to be planted, I have a couple of things that are actually blooming. And this is the ironweed plant that I picked up, which is really cool. For late season color, it has almost like these starburst type blooms, very similar looking to, say, like a Santeria or a cornflower. Really pretty, and it has this foliage that looks to me almost like Amsonia. So I thought this was a fun plant, and I was happy to add it to my garden this season. So I'll have to get that planted soon. And I also have 2 new 9-barks. This one is a dwarf variety that I have to plant. Lowe's had these $9.98 containers, which was a great deal. And this is the Dark Star 9-bark, which is a smaller, more compact version of a 9-bark. Gets to be about 5 feet tall, 3 to 4 feet wide. And this one here, which I'm really excited about, is a beautiful aster. Look at these dainty blooms. Well, they're not that dainty. They almost look like a daisy in this lavender color, the yellow center. And this is a cool type of aster. I did a little bit of research after I picked it up, and it seems to be a great variety. So it's called Fricardi Monch Aster, attracts butterflies, is deer resistant, and blooms, it says in summer, but I'm thinking that it blooms late summer because we are now in fall, in October actually, and it is blooming. And it likes full sun, blooms summer through fall, and it likes well-drained soil, gets 24 to 30 inches in height and in spacing. And 5 to 8 is the zones for hardiness. So if you grow this in your garden, let me know what you think of it. As I headed over here to the stairs to show you the plants that I picked up for the front porch fall refresh, I realized that I hadn't given you an update on this corner container here. Now, this container has 2 plants that I will absolutely repeat next year. One is the Sun Patient. If I had to pick between a Sun Patient and a petunia, I would pick the Sun Patient all day long because it is so low maintenance and it didn't get budworms. This plant here is pretty drought tolerant, but at the end of the season here, we've been getting a little bit of rain and some of the foliage is starting to turn yellow, but that could be expected because we are in October. And the ferns also did really well. The coleus did well. I did take some cuttings to share with a friend, so it's looking a little sparse. But another plant that's a complete rock star in this container is this one here. Now, I have grown lobelia before and it has not done well for me. I've only gotten a few weeks out of it before it totally fried, but I don't know what it is about this variety, which is the Laguna Blue by Proven Winners. I actually kept the tag so that I can refer back to it. It is called Laguna Sky Blue. But this variety did really well. Now, this is a pretty shady corner. It only gets a couple of hours of afternoon sun. So I think between getting a good amount of shade and having a container that is large enough to retain some moisture, it just made this lobelia really happy. And it just looks really beautiful, this vibrant sky blue color with this orange that I chose for the Sun Patient. And this actually worked out really well. Orange was a color that I hadn't used in the garden before. I tried it, new to me this year. I've really enjoyed it. And it also transitioned really beautifully into fall. Look, it's the same color as my pumpkin. And here are the plants that I picked up for my front porch fall refresh. I have mentioned before that I do like to use perennials in containers whenever possible. So I picked up 2 of these heucheras or coral bells. The variety is called Carnival Watermelon. Now, these do like part sun, part shade, and my front porch is pretty much full sun all afternoon. But I'm hopeful that if I keep these watered enough that they will be okay in my fall display. So I grabbed 2 of those. Now, I don't love mums, if I'm being honest, especially not these seasonal ones, but this year, this white one with this creamy yellow center kind of called me, and I decided that I would add 2 of them to my front porch this year. And they're really pretty. They're still pretty tightly budded, which means I should get a few weeks out of it at least, so we shall see. And something I have used before, which is also an annual, is these decorative kales and cabbages. Now, what's cool about these is that as the temperatures continue to cool, the center will get more purple and more pink, which is really fun. So I also have 2 of those. A couple of pumpkins, and this time of year you will see lots of these decorative pumpkins at the box store retailers and your local nurseries. But if you have a farm available to you in your town that sells these, that would be a great option to pick these up. Last year I stopped at a local farm because I live in a farming community, plenty of farms around, and they had some traditional orange and white shaped pumpkins, and I grabbed some there. But this year they really upped their pumpkin game and they had these really beautiful ones. So I was running an errand and I saw that they were loading up all of the pallets and this big wagon with these beautiful pumpkins. So I pulled in and I grabbed some for my front porch fall display. Now, don't worry, these will not go to waste. At the end of the season, George will usually cut them or split them for me and we'll put them out in the woods. And just last year, the very next day after we had put out the pumpkins, the deer were already snacking on them. We are losing light quick, and that is the downside of the fall. The days are shorter, so you have to pack things in faster, which means I wasn't able to film a lot of my planting because I just needed to hurry up and get it done. But let me show you how things turned out. Here in the larger planters, I put a mum, and this is a really pretty one. It's the white with a little bit of yellow, and I love that it's still pretty tightly budded, which means I'll get to enjoy it for a little bit longer. I did just break off a little bud. And then in the smaller containers, I just put a single cabbage. And in the front there, I added a single heuchera. And I repeated the same thing on the other side, and then I tucked in these pumpkins. I do think that I need maybe one more pumpkin or two, but we'll see how that goes. It's the next day, and I did end up going back to the farm to grab a couple more pumpkins. I picked up 3. So I think that it really rounded out the display and finished things off. I grabbed that smaller orange one there, the Cinderella pumpkin, the white one on the side of the cabbage, and the green one over on the bottom by the heuchera. And I think it helped balance things out, and I really love the way that it looks. And even my son went ahead and added a couple of his Halloween touches with Mr. Skeleton over on the rocker there. We had set that up last year. He wanted to go look for a rocking chair, so I took him to the thrift store, and he was really proud of his Halloween decoration. And then this year, he picked up this little skeleton that he repurposed a plant stand that I had in the shed to use to prop him up, which I thought was really clever. He's definitely picking up some handy tips from his dad there on getting creative with what we have around the house. And of course, Scully, which he had purchased with his own money. He'd been saving up since last Halloween, so I was really proud of him. He wanted to put this out in July, but we held him off until the fall. But he looks really cute lit up at night and makes a great companion to all of Mom's fall flowers and pumpkin display. Well, that was another productive day. I'm glad to have transitioned all of my planters from summer to fall. And now that we're in October, let me know which plants are still looking great in your garden. Leave me a comment below. And I just want to take a moment to thank all of you for sticking around and for watching my videos. I know that for most of us, the gardening season is now wrapping up. We're heading into the slow season now, but I still have plenty of things to do out in the garden before I can hang up that shovel for the season. I just ordered some garlic bulbs that we'll be planting in a few weeks. I also am looking to order some spring blooming bulbs because even though we're tired at the end of the season, we are always really happy to have put in the work in the fall when those beautiful blooms show up in the spring. So thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will catch you in the next one.